Tallman, who honestly I don't think I've seen you in a month because
Yeah.
you had a couple of big time meetings you had to deal with,
Yes.
and then we had the holidays.
Yeah. New Year's Day and Christmas Day were both Mondays, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, and then you were the 2 Mondays preceding that. You were out.
I was doing very important corporate things.
Yes, big corporate.
Very important.
Chris is a big
things.
corporate titan.
Yes.
So,
Rich mahogany.
You mentioned before the break we talked about how upsetting it is that the Pac-12 is potentially winning a national championship on its deathbed.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens tonight, which we'll talk about in the last segment. We'll actually talk about what we think is going to see in the game. But this is the true, like, you want to talk about icky, like, yes, it's really icky that all of this has been determined solely by money. Like, only by money and not like by like, hey, can we make money and make it better for everybody involved? And like, maybe if we took a little less money and did this, it would be, we can improve the thing we love and not so much tear it down and completely rebuild it into something that people who grew up watching it and loving it won't recognize it anymore.
Yeah.
At no point was that taken. And that's the issue. Like, I know Greg Sankey is just doing his job. And when Kevin Warren was in the Big Ten, he was just doing his job. And the Big 12 hired Brett Yormark to just do his job. And Jim Phillips does something in the ACC. I haven't quite figured out
Wondered when we were going to get to that
what
one.
that is yet. George Kliavkov and the previous commissioner, Larry Scott, were totally asleep at the switch and allowed hubris, greed, ignorance, like, just to completely take over. And no one could get in the room and go, guys, like, this is, I know that you think that you're worth this much, but like, that's maybe more of a self-esteem thing than what's reality.
Yeah.
The reality is this, and now this conference is gone because they couldn't. It's not even reading tea leaves. It's reading what's going on in front of you. Like, it is.
Yeah, it didn't feel subtle.
It's not like, oh, this could never happen to us. We have lots of books here. Like, okay. I mean, tell me when 25 million people are tuning in to watch the Stanford physics lecture.
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, your books matter. I get that there's way more money in academia and there's all that stuff, but when it comes to what goes on television, when there's a billion things to watch on television, that's another thing they didn't realize is like, back when there were only 10 channels, like, TV deals were that's just extra money. It's found money, essentially, that they want to put you on.
Yeah.
Now, when there's a billion channels and you got to fill content, like, you got to take the best deal you can because there's always somewhere to go.
Yeah.
That's not you. And the Pac-12 is the victim. They're the first major conference victim of this. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be the last. I think we've already seen it with the ACC. Like, that's coming next.
Yeah.
Because they over-prepared for this.
What do you mean?
So the Pac-12 didn't, they were negotiating right down to the 11th hour about, well, this is the TV deal. We're going to get this much money. We know we're going to get this much money. As where in 2016, the ACC, 2013 and then again in 2016, they said, listen, here's what we're going to do. So that this is not a problem for us anymore. We're going to sign this really long grant of rights. And that way, everybody's locked in, everybody's going to be happy, and we're going to be stable. We're going to be the most stable conference. What happened to the Big 12 is not going to happen to us because that's what happened in that point. Mm-hmm. That's why they made the deal. We're going to be in a good position because we're going to be stable. We've got a television network. We've got all this stuff, and everything's going to be fine. And everybody's going to be fine with this money and all that. Well, then, SEC and Big Ten makes new TV deals, and the Pac-12 falls apart. And some of the teams in the ACC that are like, hey, we play these teams every year, right? Yeah. They're going to make twice as much, if not more, than twice as much money than we are.
Yeah.
And we can't make that up. Like, when they're making $15 million more than us, like, we can maybe make that up in other ways. But when they're going to be making $50 million more than us,
right?
Like, I don't know. Like, the math stops
right
at a certain point. So we are unhappy with this. What can you do about it? And then they're like, nothing. So would you, could we do this? Maybe. Is that going to make it up? Probably not. Well, aren't you worried about it? Nah. Nah. We made a deal. Like the other day, I was just in the room with the Pac-12 guy and the Big Ten guy, and we were having beers, and he was like, let's do this alliance. And I was like, bro, great idea. And then we had an alliance. And then how did it work out for you? Oh, the Big Ten did whatever it wanted to do and just left us in the Pac-12 holding each other's you-know-whats. And but it'll be fine. I mean, you guys can't go anywhere, so what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, it's scary that the conversations may not, like, you may not be doing farce right now. Like, it may not have been that much different.
I'm not too far off
than that.
And then like when the Pac-12 crumbles, you know, the ACC, and very rightfully so, I'm sure a lot of them were like, hey, we can't let that happen to us. And then there's the other ones that are like, we understand that you can't let that happen to you, but like those schools that like are suffering this, they're just like us. So nobody's calling us like they're calling you if you just leave. So like, let's try to work together. And they're like, yeah, but that's not how things work anymore.
Yeah.
It's every man for himself. This is the zombie apocalypse, and we are absolutely going to fight to stay alive. And that's just how it's been. And Washington is going to be fine. They're going to be in the Big Ten. They made it through. They're on the other side of the wall that the zombies can't get over.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're fine. But the Pac-12 could win it. And if you had just been maybe a little bit more reasonable about yourself, you'd be going into this next era of college football on an up because you've got a team that hasn't won it since 1992, winning the title and showing that there's parity in college football now.
Yeah.
It's coming around. Like, it doesn't always have to be an SEC team. This is great news, but it's not really that great news because, they're a Pac-12 team, but they're not really anymore because as soon as the game's over, so is the Pac-12.
Yeah, they're a Big Ten team. This is a Big Ten title game. It is for all, but for some reason, probably because technically it is a Pac-12 Big Ten championship game. But also, too, I think there's such a collective disdain for the SEC that everybody's just glad it's not Georgia and Bama.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And that's
the best part of this.
Yes. But this gets to what I don't like. I think I've said here before, and I know I've said outside of here, the conference pride era of college football, I've never understood.
No, don't get it.
I don't understand the deep pride you feel in being affiliated with a conference, right? Like, when we were young, the conference affiliation only meant that winning the Cotton Bowl was the biggest thing a Southwest Conference team could do.
Yeah.
Right? That was the pride of being in the Southwest Conference.
Yeah, SEC was winning the Sugar Bowl,
yes,
right? Yeah.
That was a huge deal. So I don't understand the conference pride era. But I don't like, and as much as I don't like the schools that are average but celebrate the SEC, I don't like that the rest of us hate the SEC. I don't want to care. Like, I never really had a problem with Bama until all of a sudden Greg Sankey and was it Slive before him?
Yeah.
Just started telling us constantly that their conference was the best.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't like. Like, I don't care. I care about who's the best team at the end of the year, and I don't care where they play. I don't care if it's 1984 and it's BYU out of the... Were they independent then? Like, I don't even care if it's an independent.
Yeah.
So that's...
It might have been the WAC then.
Yeah, it might have been the WAC, or they may have been independent. I can't remember, but...
I think they're in the WAC then.
Okay. Back when the WAC was like the super fun league.
Yeah.
But I think all of this, like, I'm glad it's not two SEC schools playing. Though I would have been fine if Bama, I thought the Rose Bowl was awesome. If Bama had won and it was Bama Washington, I'd be super fired up about the game in and of itself. But I don't like that there are people that are like, there are people out there lamenting that because there's not an SEC school playing, like, that this is really not the two best teams. Like, there are people that are making a full-throated argument that Georgia could have beat Michigan and Washington. And then I don't like that there are people that are celebrating that there's not SEC teams. And I hate that. And the conference pride era, and it's not just pride, it's money.
Yeah.
And the money that you get from being in a conference. But I hate what it's done to college football. It's eating itself. It started out where college football started to eat up other sports, right?
Yeah.
There's no Big East basketball really anymore.
Yeah.
Because the ACC swallowed up all those teams.
Yeah.
Right? So how it affected the best college basketball league of all time, right?
Yeah.
The 80s, early 90s Big East. College football swallowed it up.
Yeah.
Now it's just eating itself.
Yeah.
So I don't know where it goes, but it's completely sucked the fun out of college football, except for when the ball is snapped.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think about any of that nonsense during the Rose Bowl. I thought it was super fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas-Washington was a really good game too, but the Rose Bowl was the one that I actually sat there watching it. It was a sunny day. It was the Rose Bowl. It was these two epic programs, and I was just enjoying college football. And I was like, I hate that I only get this for 4 hours. Yeah. And then we got to go back to the business
I'm glad
of it when
that
it's over.
That somebody can watch it not bitter.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't imagine you were.
Believe me, I watched every second of it.
Yeah, but I'll be honest with you. I never once thought Florida State should be here. I wasn't thinking that's not a slight.
Yeah.
I just was so immersed in the game.
No, and I made the argument last week of like, at least of this game, if you were basing it on, what they said, well, Florida State doesn't have a quarterback, it's the 4 best teams. Well, don't think either of those two played like the 4 best teams that night. They played a really good game, but statistically you could say like, well, you're telling me that like Tate Rodemaker couldn't have thrown for 125 yards and 116. Like, let's remember that like sometimes other things happen in games that affect them.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the guy behind center.
Yeah.
And, but
can I ask, this is a total aside.
Yeah.
I've heard it said, and I don't know why, I've always enjoyed the Rose Bowl. I like it. I like the setting, the history. I'm sure this is not the first time someone has written that it should be the spot of the national championship game every year. Somebody has made an argument that it should be the. Are you super anti that, or can you at least
just because I like that it moves around.
Okay,
I like that it moves around. Look, the Rose Bowl should be in the equation. Although, the Rose Bowl, that's another thing. That's another advertising thing. The Rose Bowl has done a great job over its 100+ years of telling you it's the granddaddy of them all. We've got the best parade. Again, not a thing that's going to get me.
Yeah, no, I don't care about that at all.
But all these things that the Rose Bowl says, it's advertising. Just like the SEC, while there is some truth to it, there's a lot of it's just marketing and advertising.
It is.
So it is a great setting for the national championship game. And a lot of great games are played in the Rose Bowl. And usually it winds up being a really, really good game. But that doesn't mean that Houston shouldn't get a chance to host this, or Miami, or Atlanta, or any of these other cities that there's also college football in, especially considering that the only time the Rose Bowl is ever full, and no offense to UCLA, is when the Rose Bowl is actually happening. So I do think that there are other places that can host this and do a fine job.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to disagree with you. And I'm going to defer to you because you know more about this than me. And also, none of it matters because nobody's listening to what I say. I don't believe college football should be played indoors. So I'm not for NRG Stadium. I'm blanking not sure okay with Jerry World.
Yeah.
I don't think college football should be played at Jerry World. I'm not even wild about Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. I miss the Orange Bowl. So that's just me.
Yeah.
The only indoor stadium where I think college football should be played is the Sugar Bowl. Or in the Superdome.
Yeah.
Because that's where the Sugar Bowl always was. Perhaps I'm just a traditionalist that doesn't like things to change. But I want them to go back and play the Cotton Bowl at
the Cotton Bowl.
The Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
So I just think it sterilizes it too much. It just makes it corporate and sterile.
The atmosphere in almost every outdoor stadium feels better than every indoor stadium.
Yes.
Because especially sometimes you have to scream just to get through the elements. But, and yes, most of college football is outside most of the time.
Yes.
And so, I can agree with that. Part of it is that also, because the Rose Bowl hung up the 12-team playoff because of the parade, was specifically with Garrett. Am I lying?
Nope.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory on this.
So the Rose Bowl had it because they changed the contract and we're going to the 12-team playoff earlier. They hung up the whole deal because they're like, but we might not be on January 1st when our parade is. And the parade goes into the game and the rest of the world's like, who gives a we've wanted this for so long, and you're not going to let us have it because of floats? Because of some bitch in a dress? No, we're not going to do this. We're not doing this. Let's stop.
My kids are out of school today. I almost told them to watch.
I'm sorry about that.
Good thing I didn't. Between this and the nose hair conversation, this is not a family-friendly episode.
No, But look, that's not like, that was the thing that probably, I don't want to give them the satisfaction. They're a great bowl game. It's a beautiful setting.
Yeah.
It should be in the rotation, but their pompous jackass attitude towards everything else means that, yes, we're going to do this in Houston where they don't act like this.
Okay, but that attitude permeates college football. That's how we ended up with no Pac-12.
Okay.
That's
true.
how, that attitude, there is not a more brazen example of looking out for number one than in college football.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking out for their university and the old bowl system. That is still a lot of stroke.
And I think the bowl system needs a complete, if you want to tear something down, let's not tear something like the conferences down. Let's make these bowls make sense and make them more worthwhile now and make it worthwhile for the players and the sponsors and everybody involved. Because right now
what would you do?
Well, I'd get rid of a lot of them.
Me too.
I would get rid of a lot of them. I would up the requirements to get in a bowl.
Who was it that just proposed 8 and 4?
Herb Street.
Was it Herbie?
Yeah. I would probably do 7 and 5. That way you could maybe fill it a little bit better than 8 and 4.
Yeah.
I would, and look, I also think that eventually in this 12-team playoff, there's going to be the teams that have the bye, which is great. The trade-off right now is you have the bye, but you don't get to play at home. And if you don't have the bye, then you get to play at home that first week before you go back into the bowl system. But I will tell you that if Ohio State gets a home game and Michigan does not, say 3 years in a row, Michigan's going to be like, that's a lot of butts we could have in the seats in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that they're getting in Columbus, and we want that here. So eventually it'll just be probably home playoff games until the very end, and then the bowls are going to be screwed anyway. So that's where I think the bowls need to come up with a better plan. Now, part of the problem with the bowls is they're either one of two things. They're either a great front, a great thing for a charity and a sponsor, and they can do a lot of good things, or they're a front for money laundering.
Entirely possible.
That's what they've been for the whole, look, a couple bowls have already been caught, and then they're like, look, we won't do it anymore.
Yeah. Because they have not-for-profit status, right? Aren't all bowls founded that way?
They're non-profit things, which is, please.
Yeah. I've never understood bowls other than where they are and who plays in them.
Look, Miss America is a scholarship program. I get it. It's just all these different things. Let's just be real about what we are.
Yeah.
And, yes, let's continue giving this money to charity and maybe give more to it than just the tax write-off, threshold.
Yeah.
Let's make this all better and let's make it all make sense, because right now, if you say you make it through every round of the playoffs, you could wind up sending, and you're going to find this out, that it's going to be really hard for, say you play Ohio State on the road in the first round and you were Ole Miss, okay? So then you beat Ohio State in Columbus because, man, you've got a team that's really hot right now. Then you go in the next round and you play Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. And guess what? You just beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. Holy Lord. Well, then, there you go. Well, fortunately, your fans, a bunch of them probably went to Columbus because they've never been there before, and this is a huge opportunity. And then, fortunately, New Orleans is driving distance, so that you got there. And then you get to the next one, and they're like, we can't go to Pasadena.
Yeah.
It's just so far.
Right.
They're going to have to do it. They're just going to have to do it, because otherwise they're going to lose their shirt on tickets.
Right.
So, before that happens, because we all know it's eventually going to be a problem, let's fix it. Let's make it better. I don't have
Does that sound like college football's MO to you?
No, it
Let's
doesn't.
look ahead and make it better?
Yeah.
When was the last time college football did that? When was the last time
Never.
they made a massive sweeping change? Serious question for you and for Garrett, because you guys know better. When was the last time college football made a change that was for the greater good of the sport as a whole?
Or that they didn't do it with a gun to their head.
Okay, even that.
Yeah.
Tell me when they made one with a gun to their head.
Well, the 12-team playoff is
Playoff's
essentially
the only thing I could think of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was almost a gun to their head too, because they lost so much money during COVID, they had to do something.
And that is for the greater good of football in that it gives more teams a chance to be national champions?
Yes, but they've also found a way to maybe even water that down even more.
Okay.
With the SEC and the Big Ten being so massive.
Yeah.
And wheeling all this weight. And we
Yes.
saw what could be the potential of it. Yes, we're going to give you the 5 conference champions. and there's 4 power conferences, so the group of 5 will get their one, and the Big 12 will get their one, and the ACC will get their one. But then when it comes to filling out the other 7 at-large teams, let's be serious who we're talking about here.
Oh, I know.
So it's going to have to be like the Big 12 champion is going to have to be 12-0 or 13-0, and the other one's going to have to be 12-1.
Yeah.
To where they're like, well, I guess we can't keep out Colorado. Darn.
Yeah, I'm just generally, which is a weird thing to say on a college football show, I'm just generally down on college football when the game is not going on. It's frustrating.
Well,
I don't like the trajectory of it.
No. And
I don't like the leadership.
No. And look, I do think that at least Charlie Baker is trying to propose things that haven't been proposed before, which we haven't seen out of the presidency of the NCAA in a long time.
Yeah.
Because they need to either redo themselves or they're gone. But yeah, so it's, I think with the new structure and just kind of admitting where things are, that's the first step.
Yeah.
Now, the problem, with trying to make college football more a professional league is there's way more entities involved. Like when you have 32 teams in the NFL or 30 in Major League Baseball
right.
or, was it 30 in the NBA? You have those, there's only 30 people you have to get on the same page. In college sports, it's way, way more.
Sure, yeah.
So there's a lot of people, and where they have the fights in the NFL of well, Cincinnati doesn't make as much money as Dallas, and then Jerry can be like, "Shut up, I'll help you out with that." They can say here Cincinnati doesn't make as much money as Alabama, and Alabama's like, "Shut up, that's your problem."
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
That's where the leagues have to kind of work forward together.
Yes,
they're only they believe honestly that they're only as strong as their weakest link.
Yeah,
then that's because they know that if we've got this person that's towing an anchor. Eventually, we got to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Like Washington and Dan Snyder. Eventually, the league, doesn't matter how rich you are, you're not helping us at all.
Yeah.
You've got to go.
Yeah.
But college sports isn't like that because there's so many of them.
Right.
Because of the Cincinnatis of the world, you can be like, hey, we don't make as much as Alabama. They have this whole throng of people behind them, and because Alabama has all the money and the SEC has all this money, they can be like, yeah, well, that's your problem. Maybe you should have hired Greg Sankey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's what you should have done.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe you should have seen this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, well, what's best for the whole of this sport? College football is, like I said, it's the zombie apocalypse.
Sure.
You might help somebody across to get there, but when it comes down to there's one car with 4 seats and there's 8 of you, then 4 and 4 are going to go against each other. And
sure, yeah. You're going to turn on people quickly.
Whoever makes it is going to survive the apocalypse another day.
I don't even think we talk about you couldn't get all those entities on the same page about doing something for the greater good of college football.
Yeah.
I don't think you could get them to agree on what the greater good is.
Exactly.
I think that would be your biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
They half would tell you it's financial gain.
Yeah.
Then there would be those who are for the amateur student athlete model. There are those that, for all that was wrong with them, I think Bobby Knight was for student athletes.
Yeah.
Right? So there are still people like him. So I don't even think they could all get on the same page and say, this is actually what the greater good is.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you had a group of leaders, right? I don't think the 12 people on the playoff committee or however many there are, they wouldn't even articulate the same vision for the committee.
No,
so
absolutely not. Look,
it's a leaderless, headless runaway train.
That's why when Baylor went all through all their stuff in 2016, they had they have a lot of regions, a lot more regions than most schools have. A lot of them keep it small because they know that the bigger you get, the harder it is to get things done.
Sure, yeah.
And I said, look, I don't have faith in walking into a room of 30 people and saying look, to make this simple, we're going to order pizzas. We're going to have 15 pizzas. That way, eat basically 1 pizza per 2 people. To make it simple, we need you guys to come up with the toppings. I'm going to be back in 10 minutes. Just write down the toppings you want, and they'll be at each other's throat over how many pepperoni versus sausage and deluxe and everything that they should get.
Yeah.
And that's just a very mundane thing about how many cheese pizzas you have in this room. How many people would want this? Because they're like, well, I might, I really just want cheese, but I might want to try some of the mushroom. And you're like, well, so vote for mushroom too. It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll just do this, we'll get some of each. Well, that's too many pepperoni. Nobody's going to eat that because, all the hell was going to go, right? And then like this one guy's like, oh, look at the anchovy. And shut up, Phil. But then Phil's a problem, right?
Yes.
So it's all these things that go in, and they need to be run like, if you're going to be professional, you have to be run like a league, and you have to get people to agree to that. The problem is like you said, that people do not see the same vision. At least with like Major League Baseball, you have people. Now you have two entities now that see different visions for the future.
Yeah.
But you at least have two groups that like, there's two sides of it as opposed to 200.
Yeah. And I know people don't like, I think you're not going to find a lot of people who are super pro Roger Goodell, right?
Yeah.
But he talks a lot about defending the shield. Mm-hmm. There is one guy, now I know he works for the owners.
Yeah.
But there is one guy in charge, and he has one goal, and it is protect the shield.
Yeah.
And he might do some underhanded things, and he's compensated very well for it. But a committee-led, a quorum doesn't. You can't lead that way.
No.
There's got to be.
No, this is not a city council in a small town.
Right.
Yeah.
There's got to be a leader,
Yeah.
and I think. The only way college football gets better, and yet here we are talking about this, and this thing's going to have record eyes tonight.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're talking about how frustrating the thing is, but we're going to watch it, and it's probably going to be really good.
Yeah.
And we're all going to be counting down the days until August.
Yeah.
But it needs a leader with a clear vision and the authority to say, this is what we're doing. I don't care what the SEC commissioner says. Now, this is a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no one in college football is ever going to be able to say, I don't care what ESPN thinks. I don't care. But that's the only way it gets better, in my opinion.
No. And look, we are also at a point in history where that's not how almost anything works.
No, you're right.
It's, like there's not all right, let's all sacrifice a little bit for the greater good when it'll be good for everybody. It just may not be like, great for everybody.
Yeah.
SEC, you're going to make $75 million a year instead of 80. And they're like,
no. How am I supposed to feed my family?
Yeah. Like, what do you like? Well, this team's going to make 75 too. Well, but they are not us.
Yeah.
Like they didn't spend all this time telling you how much better they were.
This is just making me mad. This is going to make me leave here mad.
Yeah. So I don't want to do that.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
I don't want to do that, Chris. But okay, let's just say it. Who you got tonight?
I'm gonna just pick Washington, just for no reason other than to just be a contrarian. I think Michigan's defense is probably going to be a problem for Washington, but I don't know why I've become so enamored with Kalen DeBoer lately.
Oh,
but
he's
good night.
He's
just a winner, man.
Yeah, he's great. Even when he's not, it still works out for him.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the Texas game, was not the best 2 minutes of his coaching career.
No.
And if it was,
But we saw worse in college football this year.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. But if you had to like defend your coaching career on those 2 minutes, he would have been like, look, there are so many other minutes.
Yeah, look,
so many other.
I'm like 105 and 11 in my career. Give me that 2 minutes back.
Yeah, the 2 minutes back. So that's how good he is.
Yeah.
I think Washington will be a problem because I don't think Michigan has seen what Washington has, because there's only like 4 teams in the country that have Washington's like what Washington has.
When you say that, you mean speed, athlete, scheme?
Scheme, quarterback. Yeah. And, one of them was Texas, and they dispatched with them. The other one was Oregon. They dispatched with them. One of them was Florida State, and their quarterback broke his leg. So even if Florida State had been in, they still wouldn't be seeing the combination like Michigan has. Yeah. So like there were, I want to say 4, like that was probably the 4. Like the 4 teams that would give Washington problems. They've played and beaten 2 of them.
Yeah.
And Georgia, I guess, would be the other one. Like, they've played and beaten 2 of them, and 2 of them, they didn't have to. So, that's why I think that, like, because Michigan has not, like, they got the Alabama team, that quarterback is still trying to figure out who he is.
Yeah.
And, so that combination wasn't there. And, yeah, so.
You're telling me if we went back through the Big Ten schedule, we couldn't find a comp for Washington on Michigan's schedule?
No, especially not Michigan's schedule.
You're telling me Maryland in mid-September wasn't lighting up the scoreboard like Washington does?
Actually, Maryland was pretty good. But
Minnesota then.
Minnesota,
Just pick a team.
Yeah. Maryland's Tailua Tagovailoa going in the portal without any eligibility left because there's no rules. There's no rules.
Has anyone told him that?
No.
Has
Yeah,
anyone
he's
told
like,
him he's
look,
not
here's the
eligible?
deal. But my brother, like I played in the game to honor my brother, and Alabama's not good at math. We've all known that from the history of the whole state of Alabama. So I played in a fifth game when they don't know, like in the most of the state of Alabama, it's 1, 2, and a buttload. Like that's how it.
Anything past two's
Yeah,
hazy.
yeah. They support me. Maryland supports me. Just let me go play at Miami and cash my check and hang with my family.
There are no rules.
There's no rules.
There's no rules.
There's no rules. All right, that's going to do it for us. Great to see Chris again. I hope we'll see you again next Monday.
Yeah, is it a major holiday of some sort? Is it MLK Day?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.